It's another episode of Sell Me This Pro. I recorded a podcast a day ago and I got the name of the show wrong, BDog. A show that I
What
have
did you
done.
call it?
Hit the Trolls. And then I was like, oh shit,
What?
that's not the name of the show. I've done like 37 episodes. I can't even get the name right. I'm glad I got Sell Me This Pro right. It haunted me. You know how it goes.
Oh,
I
you
woke
got
up
Feed the Trolls wrong.
I woke up yesterday.
I thought you meant you called Sell Me This Pro Hit the Trolls.
No, I called Feed the Trolls, Hit the Trolls, and then I woke up and like how did I get, when you fixate over that one mistake, I was like,
Yeah.
how the hell did I get this wrong? And then also, why am I so upset it's pre-recorded? I could probably just cut it out. Spoiler, I'm not going to, but yeah, there we go. So I suddenly realized that maybe I should just quit my job. I can't even name the shows that we do. But here we are, Sell Me This Pro, got that one right. It's another episode. You're going to piss everyone off today, and I'm very excited. If you've come here because of the clickbait that I would have put in the title about Spirit Academy, I hope you're ready to be bitterly disappointed. If we talk about new talent, BDog, and then we say Spirit Academy, there's only one player that everyone talks about online, right? That is the player that everyone is going to come here to speak about.
Yeah, it's the player that has now divided community over how do you actually pronounce Kyousuke. Is it Kyousuke? Is it Kyousuke? Is it Kyousuke? Don't know. We've been going with Kyousuke. But yeah, he's the one that a lot of people will expect this to be about because it is really low-hanging fruit, isn't it? When you think about his trajectory, he's the donk face-it companion. He is the new cult following that Spirit Academy have got behind him. Everyone is now a Kyousuke stan because people missed the boat on Donk, I think, that didn't watch Tier 2, Tier 3, and now have been really keeping an eye on what Spirit Academy are achieving and what they're doing. Kyousuke has been finding a lot of success. You look at his rating on HRTV, a 1.27 at the time of recording this. Like, it is bonkers how good this guy is. But on Sell Me This Pro, we don't do this. We don't really go for the optimal like clickbait. Oh, let's film a 20-minute video on Kyousuke because everyone knows who Kyousuke is. Everyone knows that he's really good. Everyone knows that his aim is fantastic. Everyone knows that he's following the same trajectory as Donk at current. He's also making the same mistakes that Donk did whilst he was in Spirit Academy in terms of his positioning is actually just not very good, but he gets himself out on aim, which is really cool to actually see. Someone who casted Donk in the Academy and now someone who's casting Kyousuke in the Academy, it's really weird because if you take the HUD off and you sort of look at some of their plays, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between Donk and Kyousuke at times. It's really awesome.
So you'll notice I didn't say his name. I was waiting for you to pronounce it according to the way you thought it should be pronounced because I have been struggling with that. So on the Kyousuke thing, before we move on, Spirit Academy, the idea would be much like they did with Donk. You produce this young talent, you raise them up, and then you move them into your main roster. Is that going to happen though with Kyousuke because of all the Donk comparisons?
Not at the moment. I think the way Spirit Academy are operating currently, and I think they sort of missed. I think they learned a lot of lessons with the original Spirit roster, or Spirit Academy roster with Zontix, Donk, Artfrost. But that trio was scary in the Academy. But I think they learned a lot of lessons with that because they promoted two of them. And they didn't really know what to do with Artfrost. And I think they let him go to, I think it was Parivision at the time, for, I'd imagine, not a lot of money because he was just sort of stuck and he wanted to just progress his career. I think, and what I would imagine is the Spirit Academy model, and I don't know any inside info, so it's just pure assumption, but I think it will follow the late Mal's NXT roster where you're bringing up all these players, they're doing really well, and then you sell them on for profit. And that would make Spirit even more sustainable as an org because you've got Spirit, the main team, winning everything. You then got the Academy team winning or doing deep runs in Tier 2, Tier 3, and then you sell the players on for a lot of profit. It feels sustainable in a climate where esports is very unsustainable at the moment.
100%. So now the final focus on the player that we're actually not going to be focusing on, just because it is fun to pick your brain here. Do you think that the hype and the focus is purely because, like you mentioned, people just missed the Donk train and now they don't want to be sort of on the back foot should this guy rise up into Tier 1?
I think there's a strong component of it, But I think it would be unfair to say because people missed out on Donk, they're just solely going on Kyousuke, because he is a fantastic player in his own regard. He is a very highly rated player. And I think what's actually really interesting is I think Spirit Academy have actually handled him and in terms of his development really well. Because there was a lot of people in January, before Rostermania ended, saying, why isn't Kyousuke getting a transfer? Even if it's not just a transfer, if it's just a loan to like a tier 2, tier 1 team, like why isn't that happening? Because he's not ready, guys. Like the reality is he's really good mechanically, and Spirit Academy, when it comes to themselves as a team, they're all over the place. Like if you watch Spirit Academy games, they're really entertaining because they're high octane, they're almost a little bit puggy. Fundamentally, in the stages, the early stage of the round, they're good. The mid to the close round, the late stage is nice, but the middle is muddled, like so muddled. And they got to sort that out. And I know SYPH0 will be working a lot with that. SYPH0's a very, very good coach. And obviously, Donk's given SYPH0 a lot of praise for the player he has turned into and become today. These guys need development. Like Kyousuke is 17. Like I know we have these generational talents where you've got Donk, you've got Manasi, and people now are expecting a ridiculous amount of performance from a guy that is so young. But I mean, you also have to got realistic expectations. You can't paint all of these like 16, 17-year-old like potential talents with the same brush. Like some of them in the reality, they're not going to all be wonder kids. And you have to mold them in the right way and take them in the right direction. So yeah, Spirit Academy, I think they're doing a very good job right now with their team. I think Kyousuke is definitely not ready for a jump up to tier 1 just yet. Maybe at the end of the year he could be, who knows? Mechanically he is. I'm not debating that whatsoever, but fundamentally and from a team experience point, he's not there yet.
But we're not here to talk about Kyousuke much
I'm not
more.
even here to talk about him.
No, but I wanted to bring him up because I know he's what everyone's interested in, right? If
Yeah.
you are watching this, one, it's pretty hard to get people interested in tier 2, tier 3 anyway. But when they are, that's what they're interested in, is the name that everyone else is throwing around. But you don't think that is the name that should be thrown around, because you sent me a message and you said, you know what? We have to do an episode where we talk about SYPH0. I think everyone's going on about Kyousuke, but they're missing the mark here. This is the guy I want to focus in on. So tell me, who the hell is SYPH0 and why should we care?
I think SYPH0, so to face this, we've spoken about Kyousuke for a reason, because he is the best player on that team. Like there's no denying that. But I think SYPH0 is the complete player on Spirit Academy, and he's the second best player, sort of rivaling Kyousuke. Not for stats, not for stats, but just the way he plays the game, the awareness he has, the CS. I like, people will call it a metric of like CS IQ, and I'll break down what that means in just a little bit. I might have done it before in previous episodes, but we'll go into it. But SYPH0 is your anchor's favorite anchor to watch. Like he's so good at staying alive. He does all the hard work of being alive on a bomb site that doesn't really get tested for 10 rounds and a half. But when he's needed, he will get a multi-kill. When he's needed, he'll drop his utility, he'll fall back, he'll get a preemptive rotation over. And I really am impressed watching him, because of he just seems so in tune with what's going on over the map. And the credit to that is Spirit Academy's communication, because obviously he's like getting all the context clues and building up a bigger picture in his head. But the timings on when he pushes for info are spot on nine times out of 10. The clutch ability this guy has, which you need in the small site anchor, because if things go tits up on the other site, you need your rotators to come in and close. I will use Train as an example. I've seen 4 games on Train now for Spirit Academy, and I think SYPH0 has only died needlessly once on the bomb site, and he has clutched about 4 1v2s and a 1v3, and when he's needed like 6 1v1s. Like his 1v1 percentage is like crazy. Like he's such a good, dependable player, where he's a boring player because he's not a spotlight player. And I think a lot of people will obviously zoom in on the optics of Kyousuke because he's thrown in the spotlight continuously because he's set up by his team. People will then look at Alcaran, who's the AWP on this team. We can speak about Alcaran a little bit potentially later, but he's the most inconsistent, consistent AWPer, where he's consistently inconsistent. And I've used this analogy so much on CCT. So if you've watched me on CCT and you've watched me in Spirit Academy, I'm sorry, you're going to hear a lot of this repeated over, right? But if Alcaraz starts strong, genuinely, if he's like 2-0, 3-0, if he hits that first AWP shot, he will go on and get like 20 kills in the game. If he misses the first AWP shot on the gun rounds, genuinely, he goes like 0-7. And he just doesn't get involved in the game at all. And it takes him ages to build back into it. But it's fun to watch because you never really know what you're going to get out of him. He's mental. There's a analogy that I, again, bring up for Alcaraz. We'll go back to SYPH0 in a sec. But this is a good framing as to why people zoom in so much on spotlight players. And why I think there is definitely a term for, I call them spotlight players. And then I see like the behind the scenes, like heavy duty action people. As a really good example, Dust 2, 1v1. Actually, it was a 1v2 at the time. CT side, Alcaraz in on short. You've got a player that is playing ramp behind the A bomb site, and you've got a player in pit. And Hedrick is in pit, scoped in with the AWP. First shot, he just owns the guy at A box. Like, it's a quick scope, it's instantaneous. You don't even see the guy on the screen, really, and he's just dead. 1v1, they've both got AWPs. Alcaraz swaps to the Deagle, running across the screen from the bomb site too long, and he 1-Deags Hedrick instantly. And Hedrick's just scoped in on the angle. And you watch the replay back, you're like, what? Like, why? Firstly, why the fuck has he done that? Secondly, how has he hit that shot? It's mental. It's insane. It's Alcaraz in the spotlight. Same with Kyousuke. Kyousuke gets set up by the team to have all these like important multi-kill rounds. And then you got SYPH0. And no one talks about SYPH0 because he's the one that is pushing and getting all the valuable info to set up his team. He's the one that's being the boring person, just sat holding for a lurk on T side. But he does his job perfectly because they never get caught out by lurkers. He then becomes a lurker and comes in towards elbow on Ancient, for example, and then grabs a kill. It's such a good player because he is the one consistent piece that needs to be consistent on this team for the role that he's playing. And yeah, doesn't deserve enough attention. And I love him. I think he's great.
I love how much you love him. We'll get back to him now, but I want to quickly rewind all the way back to something you mentioned right at the beginning, the concept of SYPH0. So break this down for someone watching, because I'm sure you'll bring it up in the next few episodes. When you say SYPH0, what do you mean?
So it's almost like you can break it down to several factors, but I think the easiest way to probably explain it is the awareness a player has in a game. For example, you've taken the A bomb site. When's your internal timer going to go back and check ramp for a flank? Or when's going to be the presence of mind for you to drop this smoke? Because you think, my A players haven't heard anything for a while on their bomb site. It's been awfully quiet over here for quite a while. There's 1 minute left on the clock, 1 minute 05. I'll hold my smoke for an extra 5 seconds and then I'll drop it. And then there's 20 seconds left. That delays them for another 20 seconds. I have to react with utility. And that means that I can then fall back, I can reposition, I can tuck, I've then got all the info. It's just having these small things. So you're not being wasteful of your utility. You're being aware potentially of what the next threat could be. But it's the process. I think that's the key thing for players that have got really good CSIQ, and why people will categorize it a lot as game sense, because it's when does all of these clues click in your brain, and how long does that take for you to think, this is all happening right now, what's my next step? And the moment it can happen, and you see this a lot in tier 1 because you've been drilled so much, you've got so much experience, but it's like the moment that can happen without almost like a brain lag, without thinking, say you're playing Face It, you're sat there, you're watching the bomb site, you're thinking, I haven't heard anything from the A players in a while. Don't know what's happening. Should I drop my smoke? Should I flash my teammate? Should I use my little microphone key and go, guys, what's happening? What? But by that time, you've taken like 3, 4, 5 seconds. They do it naturally. It's just instinctual. That's the word. It's just instinct. And I think that's probably the one of the more basic ways to break down what CSIQ is. But it's just everything comes to you so naturally. You've got a clear picture of what's going on in your head. You know what the next step is, and you know what the next step is after that. And it's just having that awareness. It's having that presence of mind. That's how I would describe CSIQ.
To be clear, though, I don't think that's something you can coach. I think that comes from hours and hours and hours in the game, and even those with hours in the game don't necessarily have that IQ.
I don't think you can coach it, but also it's one of those things that you can gain naturally just from experience. And I think that's why the I think the discussion about Kyousuke going and being loaned out to a tier 1 team, for example, I don't think he's got, when we say he's not ready, because he hasn't had these reps, he hasn't had the experience of, okay, in this situation, I can do X, Y, Z, and I get punished for doing Y, for example. Or if I do Z, then what's the next step? Or what's the reaction going to be? And how does that influence the rest of my team? So it's one of those things. And it comes a lot with experience. It comes a lot with reps. And for example, Spirit Academy, they've played 184 maps played, it looks like, in 9 months, which is a good amount of maps, a good amount of best of threes. But you got to remember that, I don't know, teams like Mal's NXT, teams like Monty, before Monty went through that shift, they were playing like hundreds of maps. So it's one of those things where you give these guys a year, they're good now. You give them a whole year where they're just, the sole objective is getting better, building on the level they've got now and going deeper in tournaments. That's another thing. What's it like to go deep in a tournament? What's it like to win a CCT? Well, these guys know what it's like to win one of these CCTs, and know what it's like to win that LAN now with Bet Boom Land de la LAN, even though that wasn't the most exciting of competitions. They still had a LAN experience, they still went there, and they still won. It's all things that build in and make your players better.
Do you think that there is enough opportunity for a team like Spirit Academy to get the reps in that they need to play on LAN, to play all these various tournaments, to put them in a position where their players do become attractive to bigger organizations, or potentially to Spirit themselves moving them up?
I actually think there's more opportunity now with VRS. That sounds controversial, but you think about, I'll use PGL as an example, right? Because PGL didn't have Spirit at Cluj. If Spirit Academy had enough VRS points to be invited, Spirit would 100 million % send Spirit Academy. Like, it makes complete sense. If you've got the VRS points to do it, if you're able to acquire the points, you're able to win in online tournaments. Like, the way I think VRS works now is, if basically Spirit Academy have won a CCT, they won the CCT in December 3rd. So they're eligible for wildcard invites now.
Yeah.
So I don't see why they wouldn't be. Say the main roster couldn't attend for whatever reason, you could send the academy team.
I think that would also be really fun, because obviously people have their eyes on Kyousuke as a potential, Donk 2.0. So that would get the fans excited.
Absolutely.
But like you said, the rest of this lineup also has the potential to showcase what they're capable of. So it becomes cool. You didn't get the big dogs, quote unquote, but you could get the next best thing.
Yeah, and it's eyes early on a team that deserves eyes on them, not just for Kyousuke, but just for the individuals. Like, we've not spoken about Mokujin, and we've not spoken about the fact that his individual level has rose exponentially over the last 4 months. We've not spoken about the fact that Mokujin can just get a multi-kill whenever he feels like it, and it looks effortless. We've not spoken about Robo and his mid-round calling being a little bit hit and miss, but the beginning is always spot on, the landing, they always stick it. And now he's improved individually as well. That's the thing. Like, you don't know. Like, if I said to you, if I just said to a random fan, "I'll name 3 players on Spirit Academy," they probably couldn't do it. And that's not me being horrible, but that's just a reality of, a lot of fans don't watch Tier 2 Counter-Strike, but they'll know the Hyper Kyousuke. You might not even know the Orcs called Alcaran. It's one of those, and it's a shame, but that's why I'm really, really, really hopeful for VRS, because it's, once they sort it out, there will be a lot more opportunities, I hope. But there will also not only be opportunities for teams to go improve themselves, there'll be more eyes on them, and people will get to know who these players are. And it doesn't come as so much as a surprise, where, for example, the RMRs, the major, where the players we've been watching over the past 6 months in Tier 2 come into this tournament, people go, "Oh, wow, they're really good. Where have they come from? They've come out of nowhere." No, they haven't, dickhead. Like, they've been grinding for so long, and you need to watch them. And I know people don't have the time to watch Tier 2 Counter-Strike. I understand that. People want to watch the big events, but it's the whole ecosystem in Tier 2 T3 is really interesting, because you get to see a journey of a team. And I think that's one of the things you asked me about Tier 2 back in the day. You're like, why do you like it so much? Because you see the beginning of a career, you see what they can become, and then you see them go on to Tier 1, and that you are following that journey, and it's beautiful. So I hope there are more opportunities in VRS, because it means we'll get these breakthrough teams come through a lot more frequently, and hopefully a lot sooner than expected.
I also think it's so much more fun when you spot a player in tier 2 and you get to watch like a breakout performance or something really cool online, and then it's a couple of months later and you see them sort of crack the big time and they're on LAN for the first time, and you feel part of that journey because you were watching them way back when, and you feel a lot more attached to them, and that's something beautiful. Let's focus back in on SYPH0 though, because he is the player we wanted to talk about. I'm going to change this up a little bit because you're being very positive, but let's look at this from a different angle. What does he still have to work on if you're taking a look at his gameplay and what he's doing if he wants to crack the big time? You didn't see that coming today, BDog.
No, I didn't. I think actually, just to be honest, that a generic. We'll go generic, and then we'll zoom in individually on SYPH0. And that is, I think generally for this team, as we said before, they just need more reps. They also actually need to know what it's like to go deeper in tournaments, because yes, they've won that CCT. They were struggling playoffs at the start of the year, like round of 16, quarterfinals, like that isn't what you associate them with. And yes, CCT has got harder with the VRS invites, but you still expect a certain level. It's overall for the team as well, it is just the consistency, because they are winning games, but the manner in which they win games, I imagine, can be quite stressful because you don't know what's going on half the time. Especially on CT side, there's a lot of just crazy shenanigans that are happening. And it puts SYPH0, for example, where he has to clutch up a bit more. I actually think the one thing that SYPH0 can improve on a lot more is being put in those pressure situations, which does come a lot in small site anchoring. But I think if he's in a 1v1, I think I have him to win that fight the majority of the time. But if there's two people like with proper trade spacing double swinging him, I expect him to get one and then get traded immediately. He's really good at dropping utility and disengaging and staying alive, that is true, but when it's the pure sheer head-to-head multi-kill potential, that's where you'd rather have Kyousuke. That's where, to be honest, you'd rather have Mokajin in that regard. He's a really interesting anchor to watch because he's almost like a mole, where he's burrowing just into the site more and more. But finally, if you have to challenge him, he always wants support from teammates. He always wants to make sure that every fight is isolated one-on-one. That's one of his strengths, but honestly, one of his weaknesses is if there's a head-on collision on that bomb site, sometimes he struggles to get a multi. But that's hard. Again, that's just experience. Again, that comes back into the experience time, right? In the map, and maybe you're just playing refrag defender mode. I don't know.
Who does he replace if Spirit moves him up into the main team, though?
I don't think they would, though. That's the thing. But if they had to, he's probably magixx or Zontix, I suppose. I don't think you can. The thing is, with that Spirit team, if you replace anyone on the team, it'd have to be Zontix. Because role for role, they're pretty similar, but I don't think you can replace magixx because of what he brings to the team just externally. It'd have to be Zontix, actually, yeah.
And yet so many would be calling for magixx head. So that's what I think is kind of interesting about SYPH0, because you go, okay, cool. If you want magixx out, this is the potential next best thing, right? We can talk about buying players, but I feel quite strongly if organizations are investing in academy teams, the idea is that you can build something from that, right? There are people that would like to see a change. I mean, is SYPH0 the player to make that change, though? Because from what you're saying, you don't see that. You think he's more of the investment you make to sell on to someone else.
I tell you what, the best example I can give is SYPH0 in, I don't know, I don't want to put a time frame on it. In the future, given the way that he's going right now, I think he's going to turn into like a Perfecto type player. You know where people are calling for Perfecto to come back because he's one of the best in the role that he does. I think SYPH0 has got that capability. I actually do see a lot of like early Perfecto when I watch SYPH0. So I think that's probably the best direct comparison I can give in terms of what the potential is for this guy. Whether he achieves it, we don't know. Like he's 16. Like 16 trialed. That's another thing we haven't even mentioned yet. Trialed for Cloud9. You know, when Cloud9 went and they did that big switch, they brought in Icy, they brought in Inters.
Oh, hectic.
Yeah, so he was going to be the Inters guy, and then they went with Inters, I think, for experience because there was too many young guys on the team, I'd imagine. So it would have been Boomich, Axile, Icy, Heavy God, SYPH0. But he didn't have the
Let's play a
experience at the
game.
time.
Yeah, let's play a game. He doesn't have the
Okay.
experience. But do you think that lineup would have had a different results if he had been in the mix?
Yeah, he's better than Inters. Yeah, sorry Inters, but he knows how to hold angles. Like there was, I mean, Maui had this inside joke on his stream where he'd call him like BBL Inters because every single time he'd peak something, it just his ass would be sticking out. So yeah,
Ah!
Sypho would be better than Inters. Yeah.
So he could have been in a very different position had that of trial
Could have been,
gone
but
a
at the
different
same
way.
time, it's one of those where if you take that risk and say the trajectory went the same way with Cloud9 as it did, I mean, his career potentially just could have been shelved right there and then because where do you
For
go?
sure.
Like, so I think he made the right decision based on hindsight, but obviously you're not to know that. And I think they didn't go with him anyway because he didn't have the experience, and Inters did, which at that point fair. But now looking back on it. Could have probably
So
taken
if
the risk.
fair enough. So if you were, I mean, I know what you're saying. He needs more time. We've spoken about that. He's only 16. There's still a lot of time remaining. But if you were to push him into a tier 1 lineup, where would you put him?
I don't know.
I'm having the best time. I'm like, let me think of the hardest questions to ask you today and just throw them out there.
Hang on. Where's the ranking?
Also, let's just that there is obviously for those of you who don't know, there's probably a language barrier that's going to come into play, right?
Oh, yeah, 100
But
million
let's just
percent.
pretend. We're just creating this false narrative in this magical world.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, let's just say that like everyone speaks
Okay, well,
everything,
look,
and
I'm
it
going to
doesn't
be
matter.
real as well. He can't go into Spirit right now because they're #1 team in the world. Like, let's not do that.
I mean, I'd argue Vitality is better than Spirit, but I mean that's a whole different podcast, right?
Ranking wise, right now they're not.
The rankings
So
are. I don't take the rankings seriously until they're fixed. So for me, it's
okay, sure.
Vitality 1, Spirit 2.
I'll tell you what would be fun then. Actually, if we're going in that route, I'll put him in Bet Boom. Get rid of
Interesting.
Siren. Put him in for there. That would be a really interesting move. I'm actually just now looking at. I don't think he's ready for VP. That sort of thing. He is a guy. I think if he speaks English, he would be a guy that I could see Gamer Legion looking at and be like, oh, that's an interesting player to potentially pick up, like that sort of project. So that's where ideal world, quote unquote, yeah, Gamer Legion I think's a fun fit for him.
I would have put him in Bet Boom. I think that's funner, but so be it.
Well, there's
I
two
hear
options
you.
there. You can do what you want.
Yeah.
The national option would be Bet Boom, in terms of the dialect, and then the international one, Gamer
It's a
Legion, just
potential
because they're a
Gamer
bit
Legion.
higher up their rankings, and that's what they do. They just take players out of tier 2.
It's pretty insane when you look at Spirit though, and you start comparing like their actual main team and their academy team and how young everyone is. Like, and you touched on it in terms of so I've realized actually, and for anyone watching to this point, like I'm aware that fans of Counter-Strike do not care about this. I'm starting to realize it's not a thing. We who work in the industry are very obsessed with the oh, sorry about that. We're a bit obsessed about the business side of it, right?
Yeah.
And understanding the financial implications. Fans don't care, that's fine. But what is fascinating to me is Spirit is putting themselves in a position where they can make a profit. Heroic has done a fantastic job of learning when to let go of players and make money from them, and they've put themselves in that position. But I think
They're
Spirit
doing
is
okay, but they got Nilo now. Like, what's going on there? Nilo going to play
fair
Counter
enough.
Strike?
We don't know, but also I think that they've made enough money from some of the players that they've sold and the cores and whatever else that they can kind of afford to not have a decision on
Yeah,
him. But
whatever, sure.
like we can sit with him for a little bit, and we've spoken about this. But Spirit is in a position where, like you mentioned, they've got a very young main roster, and then they've got this very young academy team, which gives them a couple of years to kind of play with those players, either sell them on, invest in them, things like that. Smart for the organization to keep it young, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And there's a world in which we hope that, for example, WePlay comes back. I mean, we miss you, WePlay.
We
and
all do.
I hope the situation obviously gets better without going too deep into politics. But hopefully they can come back at some stage, because WePlay Academy League was one of the best leagues ever, in my opinion. It was brilliant. and it created a lot of academy teams. It created a lot of opportunities, and it's a shame that that's not here anymore. But I think that definitely you can get to a point. We're definitely seeing less. We're now looking at what Navi Junior, Spirit Academy. There's Pain Academy. There's Fury Academy. There's MIBR Academy in South America. I'm probably missing some really obvious academy teams, but you had Aurora Youngbloods that don't exist really anymore. They completely stopped doing that. You have Monty Gen. That Monty Gen doesn't exist anymore because, I mean, the core of Monty Gen is now in Monty. The point is, I'm actually struggling to think of too many academy teams now, and that's a real shame because we used to have absolutely loads of them. It's a correct decision, but obviously with the way esports is at the moment, where the esports winter apparently is going on for about a decade,
Yeah, it's winter.
you
all
can't
the time.
you can't really sink too much money into it unless your team is successful. Like Navi Junior exists because those guys won a lot of stuff last year. Spirit Academy exists because they won a lot of stuff last year, but also Spirit and Navi as organizations are doing very well. So they've got the capital to be able to promote an academy project. Mouse and XT, they've got a new lineup. I don't really know how that's going. That's going to take time. That's going to take a lot of time for Mouse, but yeah, it's one of those where you want. Ideal world, I'd love loads of academy teams and to see them all back in CCT again, but it's unfortunately not happening. I think it makes sense if your organization is doing well just as a main team to then invest in the academy team, like Spirit and Navi are doing. I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did. You did.
Okay.
You got me there. I think there's pros and cons to having an academy team. I think Spirit's got the right idea, and it's interesting how many young players they've chosen to hold on to, and I think that'll be something to watch for the next few years. I suppose, though, we have to get to the point of the show, which, if you didn't know, is BDog is going to try and sell me this pro. So, SYPH0, what am I doing? Am I throwing some money there right now? Am I holding out? What's the plan?
Long-term investment for SYPH0, I think. And the reason why you can do this right now and why it's a good moment is because all the hype's on Kyousuke, so he's going to be cheaper if you buy in now. CS economics. Look, he's a very reliable anchor player. He knows exactly what to do in a lot of situations. Yes, he needs to work on being overwhelmed in a bomb site, but not being funny. That's one of the hardest roles just in CS in general, in my opinion. You got the whole exec running at you. What he can guarantee you is that he will stay alive for longer than you would expect him to. If there is a clutch, there's a very high likelihood that he will win it out and he will bring a lot of stability to this team. And that's what he provides. Stability to a team that is still trying to find their true identity. Consistency to a team that is full of players that can be a little bit inconsistent. And reliability to a team where, again, they need that experience. So being reliable on a team that is still learning and finding their footing is really good quality to have. I do think he can develop into a very good player. We've already spoken about his age. He's 16 years old. And given my track record and selling me this pro, I think he's a good one. So let's see how he develops.
I don't think you've missed with the 16. Oh, no, never mind. I was about to say something that would have been completely misconstrued. So we won't say. Yeah. We won't focus in on the age of those players, BDog. I almost set us up for a terrible meme, but I've saved us. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Here's something that we haven't done before on the show, but I kind of want to do it now. Is if I want to see, if I'm watching and I'm listening to you and I'm like, damn, this sounds really interesting. Where the hell do I get to watch Spirit Academy?
Yeah.
There's irony in this because I know they're playing right now as we're recording this.
They are.
But that would be where can I go to watch them play?
So the events they're currently competing in right now, they've got the PGL Bucharest close qualifier. That's cool, right? So imagine if they get through there. I actually think they got a pretty good chance there. I'm gonna just take a little gander in the close qualifier for them. But they're playing in Challenger League right now. They're playing in every single CCT. So CCT have got 20 series going on at the moment for Season 2. Season 3, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know yet. Once I know and I'm allowed to talk about it, I will tell everyone. But there's Season 19 right now. There's Season 20 that is going on right now as well. They're running them concurrently. So there's a good chance when you click on HLTV and you click on matches, Spirit Academy will be there. But yeah, if you like ESL Challenger League, they're also there in Europe. If you like the PGL events, they will be competing in the PGL Bucharest closed qualifier. I don't know when that is because they postponed them a little bit. I'm just going to look at the teams. Okay, so in this, realistically, to be honest with you, they can beat everyone in this closed qualifier. The only
That
one
would
that
be pretty fun.
the only thing that they would struggle with, they're playing against Bet Boom, probably. That's fun. Playing against Big, they can beat Big 100%. They might struggle a little bit with Fnatic just because they've played each other a bunch and they've got just experience. They might struggle against Ents a little bit. Apart from that, I genuinely I think they can beat everyone.
They can be, so that could be somewhat, you could actually, after we've done this, you could see them at PGL Bucharest. That is something that could actually happen, which would be
That'd
pretty
be brilliant because that literally just comes full circle into what we were talking about for this episode as well with ERS.
That would be amazing. So there you go. You can check all of that out. BDog has given you all the places you can go look. You'll hear his voice there as well, which is the best part.
Unlucky.
And he's and he's given you an idea as to why to watch. We will be back soon with another episode. Someone also put in the comments in the last one about how we need to pull footage of some of these players and put it in the videos.
Oh, really? That's a good idea.
Yeah, so maybe we'll do that soon. It just means more editing, which is never fun. But hell, let's see if we can start running a yellow board with markers and we can show them playing as well. And we should have another player for you soon. However, if you have some suggestions, we're happy for you to put them in the comments as well. I think BDog, so we can have a look. Maybe we can rate players that the community suggests.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Yeah, please let us know because we do want to obviously improve the show, and we're glad that you like it. That's why we keep doing it. So
yeah, and BDog now has to go to work, so we're going to end it here. We'll see you for the next episode.